So, my name's Jeremy Nichols. I run Social Value UK, not Social Enterprise UK, Social Value UK, which is part of an international network of countries and individuals around the world. We have members in about 45 countries now, of people who are all worrying about this, I suppose, partly measurement, but more importantly, who think we should change the way the world accounts for value more fundamentally, in fact. The way we do it generally at the moment increases inequality, not reduces it, contributes to the problem. We actually need a much more substantive shift. The kind of big picture aspirations, wildly optimistic, not going well, inequality. Anybody here think that inequality will go down over the next 5 years? Yes, I mean, there's a doctor outside for you if you do. Yeah, so that we sit there thinking we're going to reduce inequality of all this stuff, and it isn't going well, is it really? So we'll keep shouldering on. And part of it, I think, is this idea of a measurement. We did this session before lunch as well, and an hour is not long to deal with so many of the issues that we suspect will crop up. And it's not really for us so much about measurement as so much about what we measure. That's the conversation we want to be having. What are we measuring? Before we worry about how to measure particular things, which I think we can get bogged down in. We want to take a sort of slightly wider conversation about what's going on. Now, to do that, I'll be ably abetted, is that the right word? No, ably abetted, no. I'll be supported and helped, yes. Bye. Anne?
Hi, I'm Anne Lithgow from Salford City Council. I work in the Public Health and Policy team, so I think I'm taking a role as a commissioner today. I also support Social Value UK by sitting on their council, and I'm a director of the Social Audit Network.
Hi, I'm Chris Dabbs. I'm from Unlimited Potential. We're a social enterprise that, in a nutshell, specialises in social innovation for happiness. And for my sins, I also represent Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce on Salford's Health and Wellbeing Board.
Really?
It does.
Amazing. Okay, talk about that. Okay, so any of you agree with this as a kind of kick-off? I can't remember who said it, so it is a quote, but I don't remember who from. Any yeses? Yeah. Any noes?
Yes.
Okay, go on. Why?
Because it's just because people don't know how to do it.
Okay, fair enough. It's a technique thing rather than anything else. Yeah. Results can be easily rigged.
Not if you do it properly.
How would we know?
Because you compare with other areas.
Okay.
You develop it over time.
I mean, I think that's a view we do get, that it's difficult. Partly, I think you're right, because we don't know. But I think also it is quite easy, because of the variations out there and what we mean by this, to put a report out with a fantastic story about how much social impact you're having. And particularly if it's got lots of smiling children, we find that's really important. Social reports, smiling children, looking up at the camera preferably as well. That will hit all the right buttons. So I think that's a kind of starting point, which we agree. I think we need to say, why is that not the case, and what can we do? So how many of you are measuring stuff already? Are not measuring anything? Everyone's measuring something, aren't we? So everyone is already on a journey, and I think it's important to recognise in this that wherever you are, we might need to do more to get to your good if you want. But everyone's doing something. It's just a question of which bit should I do next and why should I be doing it? What are we looking at? And so from a perspective of today, thinking I suppose against the 3 years, third one of these conferences, following on from the social value, the question, yes. Yes, you are. They're not with Social Enterprise UK will distribute the slides. So two main ways, I think, that we see when people are talking about social value in commissioning or even in delivery. But in the commissioning conversation, a lot of it is about this idea, well, we've got a contract already, we're doing great stuff in it, what else can we get? What's the kind of extra bit that we can tap on? And then the other conversation is about, actually, we need to really embed in our specifications, in the end, how are we changing people's lives? And we assume positively changing people's lives, as we'll explore. And the first one often turns out something like this, where the commissioning body will have a list of indicators of things they think are social value. And if you do some of those in your contract, you will get more points, and then you'll be adding social value. Well, hey. And these are very variable. Different organisations have different lists. And so, unfortunately, if you are supplying to that, you potentially have to do many different things depending on whose list you're supplying to. And I worry about this because I think it is quite limiting in what we think about as social value. It doesn't necessarily include all the things that are, and it doesn't have a sense of which is more important than something else. And because very often it ends up in a contract, this is a real one, where it ends up with social value 2.5%. So can you do some of those other things for us, and we're only going to score a little bit on it? Yeah, exactly. So we want to focus on this one much more. And we realised from this morning that a lot of people think or feel that that's all embedded anyway. We've got a contract, we've got a relationship with our commissioner, and we've embedded social value. So what we want to kind of talk to you about is how we increase the value that we are creating within. Not increase by, therefore, adding a bit on at the other end of it, but increase it by embedding it and thinking about even maximising the value that we're creating. That's the plan anyway. And so we're going to do it by an interactive after lunch experiment with a particular project. Now this project is being commissioned currently, and it is delivering advice and support to people who are actually, let's be honest, they're not at risk of excessive drinking. They are excessively drinking, and they are you, okay? You are. So we've got a commissioner now, okay? We've got the person running the social enterprise, providing support to you lot, and you are, I suppose, so often the phrase is beneficiaries, which is already a weird word. You're people who want something to happen in your lives, and you're turning up at this service in order to get that. And I'll leave you to the service question later on. So that's the plan, okay? So let's start thinking about that. There's more than one stakeholder, obviously. Not just you lot. There'll be other groups that we need to worry about. But we've got an hour, or 40 minutes, 50. We're going to just focus on you as the people receiving support. Okay? Question 1 then. What would you say are the outputs? I'm not going to get too much into the language of definitions, so just your gut reaction. What are the outputs of this service? Less drinking. Anybody else? Sorry? Advice and support.
Better health.
Better health. Okay.
We're doing outcome.
We're doing output at the moment. Just output. So the numbers of
people who access support.
number of people who access support, number of people drinking less. So you can see already in the terminology of this stuff, people have got slightly different interpretations going on. So from your point of view, Anne, outputs from this, commissioning this service?
I'm with the numbers. It's, you know, the number of people, maybe the number of sessions, things like that. So yeah, quite big
So,
numbers.
yeah, Chris?
Whatever I can get away with.
Yeah.
Probably the number of people given advice and support.
Right. So that's all we're doing at the moment. I think we ended up with number of support sessions. So if you reflect, it's not even the number of people, just we ran some sessions, no one came, but it didn't really matter. The commissioner was happy, we put the sessions on, you know. It went well, there was one person at the back. Yeah. That's really what we mean by output. You've been given some money and you've spent it on something. Fair enough. You know, what did you spend it on? But as I hope we already started to tease out in some of your responses, that isn't an outcome. So what was the outcome then? Some of you think we've heard it already, but less. So, okay, any more? Less accidents, less drinking, better health, reduced cost of other services, reduction in crime, satisfaction, yeah. So, let's just go one of those bits first, and just take that, your point. First thing that happens, we hope, I assume, is that the people who came along saying, I'm drinking too much, I need to drink less, started to drink less. Would you ever commission on that? Well, you might not, but would you ever see a commission?
I think, yeah, you probably would, but it would be a very narrow focus. But I guess we're trying to avoid it now.
Yeah. So commissioners probably try and avoid it, but you'll still see some examples of commissioning for that happening. You know, just buying the activity. You're getting a bit better than that. Are you still trying to get away with this one, Chris, or are you?
In part, if that's what she wants.
Yeah.
But it's not why we're running what we're running.
No. So it is an outcome. But for some of you who've already offered other ideas of outcomes. So what's wrong with that? Why, for those of you who said something else, I mean, why, what's wrong with that?
It just doesn't reduce your outcome. It's always like to. Actually get better.
Could get worse?
Well, depends on your view. How do you know why they reduce their alcohol consumption?
So there's another question which we're going to keep coming back to, is this one about why did this happen? But is this the important thing, that people reduce their alcohol consumption? Is that good enough?
More clarification on the science.
Come back to that. Good point. Yeah, come back to that.
That only affects the individual rather than wider.
That's all we're talking about at the moment. It's just the individuals.
Only then.
No, just them, yeah.
But the outcomes can have an impact on wider.
There could be outcomes for other stakeholders, but we're going to have to, this is just one stakeholder, but the others are there with their own outcomes. What's wrong with this one?
Is it still a health complication associated with alcohol? So,
Could be. So you started listing other outcomes when we asked this. So one was health. There were some other things that people said.
My thought about it is they reduce it for how long? So those relapse, and that's what we know what happens.
Right. So I think the kind of thing you've said, Anne, about the sustainability of this, or how long does that last issue. But this leaves you thinking that's not good enough. Any other things that you feel say, why is that not good enough? Well,
It could be the people who reduce their alcohol consumption, not necessarily a target group. Anyone can reduce their alcohol consumption, but it's excessive drinkers that might want to.
so we've only got excessive drinkers, and you're all excessive drinkers, I'm afraid. Way above the number of units, yeah.
It's not indicating whether, I mean, just because you're, to start with, because you reduce your alcohol consumption doesn't mean you're consumer's well-being. So, in terms of some people reducing use of alcohol consumption, isn't really a health indicator, which is when people stop drinking excessively.
Okay, but are,
That's why you commissioned it in the first place, isn't it?
so Anne, can you reflect on this conversation? This not being enough? Why is it not enough?
Well, certainly in public health, it's not telling us where, I mean, I think it's what Dave was saying, it's not telling us whether anybody's health has actually improved. It's to me, it's an outcome, a direct outcome of that particular intervention, but it's not an outcome in terms of a change, really.
So it's not addressing the reason for
The reason why. So if you went back to the reason why you were doing it in the first place, it's not addressing it, is it?
Right. And why therefore?
We don't know why we reduced it in the first place.
No.
What you said is alcohol's reduced. There may be very good reasons which address the technique of reduced amount that may address it.
Okay, Chris? Not good enough. Why?
I would want to know, are people happier? Are they more resilient? Do they have a greater feeling of control in their lives?
If we just stop drinking for today, are we going to stop?
Duration. Too bloody right.
I think the reality here is back to more conditioning perspective. People have been fed back certain reports, in terms of alcohol-related violence and home and everything like that. So effectively what they've got there is then something that they need to then benchmark.
Okay.
So if it's 40-odd%, what do they want to then do?
We're going to end up with some of those issues, but right now, so you're drinking too much. What do you want to see happen in your life? What did you want to change? Why did you come? Why did you want to reduce drinking?
Look out for my health.
So it's a health issue. Has anybody got any reason they wanted to stop drinking with nothing to do with health? Relationships, okay? You thought you were losing your relationship. That's why you came. That was your problem. I'm at risk of losing my relationship. Anything else? Keep my job. I'm clearly under threat at work. If I don't sort this out, I'm going to lose my job. Anything else? Right. So if you go back to you lot and think about how you are saying why I came here, some of these things you've flagged up already about what was the root cause will be known by putting this conversation back with the people whose lives we're supposed to be supporting or helping in some way. If you do that, you'll notice you quickly get lots and lots and lots of different outcomes, all of which are more than that, because that doesn't, we use so what for quite a lot to think about it. So what? But actually in the end, it's the so what question answered by you, and you will end up with potentially a long list of different changes in your lives that you want to see, which are addressing the original cause of whatever it was that brought you here. So how do you handle that complexity from a commission?
How do we handle
If
it?
you were, if it was happening, if it was great, if people were really thinking about that diversity of outcomes.
How we'd there is a bit to understand about, you know, why did we commission the service in the first place? So what do we know about the people of Salford, in our case, and you know, their drinking habits or their health or their, you know, some of the well-being indicators. So, but we'd want to sort of say, well, we know this about the population, but is actually stopping them drinking excessively making a difference in that case? So we'd be trying to
Loop it back somewhere
really.
to some other measures that you've pre-thought about somewhere
Yeah.
along the line. But you might be, from this conversation, Chris might be finding out all sorts of different things that weren't in your list that are
Yeah.
important to people's lives. How does he get value in his contract relationship for doing those other things?
I mean, one thing to me is key is that we've got to have dialogue. We've got, you know, we need to know this. So
Yeah.
we need, but being as I sit in a public health team that has a lot of, you know, national performance indicators and things like that. I like to see things measured in a certain way, and I like to know certain things about our population, because we've got somebody behind me, the, you know, Department of Health, something like that, saying, well, health indicators for Salford, they're doing this or they're doing that or something, you know, you're not spending your money right and stuff like that.
Okay.
So we've got people behind us almost.
Dialogue.
Definitely.
And a lot of this, as we'll see, I think, isn't about how to technically measure things. It's going to be about the culture and the conversations that people are having or not having, and that goes to the heart of
And
some
it's
of
about
this.
analysis as well, because you don't know why.
No, we don't yet.
some people
No.
are drinking
No.
excessively,
Yeah.
and actually
Hasn't been great, this one so far. We got some money, we started doing that. You're absolutely right. You know, this measurement thing was all a bit new to us, but here we were, and we said, okay, healthier. And of course, there's a whole bunch of other stuff there as well now, we recognise. We haven't got enough room on the slide, we're just kind of doing one. But the important thing here is that what happens as a result of being healthier? So now you're healthier, what do you do? What changes as a result of being healthier?
Go to the gym.
As a result of being healthy, you go the other way around. So, okay, and you go to the gym, what happens next in your life as a result of going to the gym?
Improve relationships.
Got improve relationships. And then, what
Can
happens?
you ask anyone else? Is that what
Your story, Louise. So, live longer. Yeah, got happier. You know, when you go to the gym, you fall in love with someone, you get married, buy a house, you get into debt, it all gets badly wrong. You know, the story goes on down this way. It doesn't stop is the point. There has to be, you know, people always want there to be some kind of final outcome that sits there and you just can't, that's the one. I'm afraid it isn't like that. Once you start listening to a voice of people who are there for different reasons, who want some kind of change, it may not be healthier that they came from, it may be the next bit. And so some process has got to be gone through to think about how far you go down that journey. And you can't, you know, there's always a danger. If you stop here, that we generally agree that's not good enough. The risk of people who are alcoholics and addicted taking up crack cocaine instead of drinking still exists. So we want to go further. And are you happy with healthier? Want to go further?
Well, yeah, because I think to me I want something that makes some sort of element of sustainability and actual change in it, where we call it impact.
And even health doesn't give us that.
Recovery, really. So
Yeah.
being able to live a life that means that you don't then go back to the beginning again. I
Yeah.
guess.
And health may, for sometimes, in some groups, in some situations, not give us that confidence. To your, how long have we stopped drinking? How long do we go to the gym? You know, we just ran out of steam and that we lost the healthiness very quickly. So if we're not going far enough down here for some sense of it lasts, then we're not going to go far enough. How are you feeling about health?
Commercially, if that's what whoever's got the cash wants,
Yeah,
that's
you'll
what we
do
with
that,
it.
tick, yeah.
Um,
Very pragmatic, see? We are in social enterprise.
in,
Pragmatic.
in terms of our social mission, it's not that meaningful. So
You'd want to go further for your...
yeah, I'd be more into, do you feel more in control?
Yeah.
Do you have greater power over decisions, etc.?
So often the conversation about measurement or value gets stuck in the what are we doing that meets our commissioner's requirements, quite pragmatically. But actually, the people whose lives are being changed one way or the other are not sufficiently involved and have any power in that conversation about what should be measured, of what is of value. So because Chris's ethos in his organisation is grasping that and is value driven, there's a better chance that he'll be wanting to listen to you to understand where value is for you so that he can increase that and not just stop with the commissioner. But if the commissioner, if Anne and Chris are having a lot of conversations, you'll start over time to see some alignment, and there's some brilliant things happening. Equally, there's some conversations which are still way apart. But the thing about measurement and what you measure then is driven in part by how much you want to actually listen to that, your voice, in how you think about designing your goods and services, as opposed to going, hang on, we're doing all this already. I've got a contract, I'm delivering against the contract, that's all I need to do. So put that in your organisation, because you could just be an organisation, to use it commercially, tick the box.
Ultimately, our core values.
Where did they come from?
Our governance structure. So we have local people as members who elect boards. We have local people who are potential beneficiaries on our board. We recruit our staff from within the community we want to work in, etc.
Yeah. So I think there is a bit here about how do we fill what is a gap, an accountability gap between people whose lives are being changed and sometimes the organisations that are delivering that change, but they still sometimes decide what to measure. It's a bit weird. Or the commissioning conversation has lost that voice. So one of the ways of closing that accountability gap is nothing about measurement at all. It's about the values of putting something in governance behind, putting that ownership back in the community so that you've got that link. So you're more likely to hear the kind of outcomes that have gone perhaps a bit further and be designing services to deliver those. As you do that, you'll create more value. If you stop that here, you won't know whether you're creating enough value or not, even though commercially you may be very happy. But having sorted all that out, which we haven't really got time to do in a lot of detail about how far we go, anything standing out from anybody about something that's missing there, which you've actually already raised? So what's missing here? Was there something before that?
Some people.
So some people, so what does that mean if some people are reducing their alcohol consumption? It follows that some are not. And how do you think they feel then? What's the change for them? Could be even worse. I mean, you came, hoping for that positive change in your life. This bunch said they were going to help you, and it didn't work. And so there is a risk that you feel more depressed than you did before you turned up. And of course, this bit often gets missed out altogether. So now, here you are, you're the bunch who are happily reducing their drinking, and you're the bunch who are not. At a very simple level, we're starting to go down into different characteristics of groups of people within those people who we are working with, and starting to see if we can learn anything from that. But so often, an organisation just maybe stopping here or stopping there, depending on the commission relationship, and not really thinking about this. Kind of assumes that for those people that don't get what we're giving, they're no worse off. So I think that's a really big assumption, particularly if you want to increase the value of your work, you need to reduce this. You measuring that lot? See what happens to their lives? Do something about it?
Not in terms of what the commissioner is asking us for, no.
But you still do anyway.
We would pick that up more through qualitative measures.
Oh, okay. And from your point of view, if you're getting some of this, do you worry about a bunch of depressed people and are kicking around sort of?
I think it's a really difficult one for commissioners because they're trying to commission across that top line, and there's always that positive assumption of a positive trajectory. And yeah, they probably understand that sometimes, so the target will never be 100%. But actually, yeah, what happens to those other ones? So what we'd be thinking about probably now is, well, yeah, what does happen to them and where do they go from there? And so again, it's back to what you were saying about relationships and conversations, so we need to know a bit more about them.
If you're not as an organisation thinking we should be accountable to these people, after all, they came to us and their lives are now work in some way, and they were, it may not get picked up at all. But you need to be thinking about managing that. So that cultural issue about whether that's important is really fundamental. Okay, well, let's keep this simple, and then let's imagine this has happened. If we look around you, we realise that you lot have all got quite good family relationships with quite a lot of support for you, whereas you're a lot more isolated. You're going down the supermarket, buying your tins, coming back, and you're not socially drinking with this lot all out, might be too much, but nonetheless, they've got friends and support networks that you don't have. evidence, because, you know, it's just stuff we're starting to see. What would you do about that if you saw that happening? You've got this bunch, no family support, much more likely to be going in.
Probably with support, so I was thinking a lot of sessions, we've got the group sessions, should there, if we're wider than that's not just the
Right.
but the social piece.
Is there a risk that if we start running some group sessions instead, that that actually isn't anything like as fundamental as the family support that you have? Yeah. So we could. Anybody else? What else could we do? We could tweak our service maybe to do something like that.
Just going back to the one case, certainly isn't so effective. The reality is we decommission and wrap it,
Yeah.
and then think, well, what's the outcome of this?
Yeah.
And then well, we need to this is something to look at.
Else for that
next.
lot.
And all of a sudden we start to look at picnic,
Right.
start to go out.
So let's rush off to the commissioner. One of the things we could do is say, look, you know, we're seeing this happening. We haven't got enough money to do anything about it. Can we think about how we change the contract to deal with this issue? And you'd go,
Yeah, let's have a conversation.
can we have a contract though?
It's gonna, and this is where we get back to the money, isn't it? You know, how much is that going to cost?
Yeah.
And some sort of understanding of where it's making a difference.
Or, you know, we haven't got enough money to do something additional ourselves, so we can only see if we can get some additional money. Let's say, you know, that might be possible, but we've got people coming now. What are we going to do? What else can we do? If we can't afford to change the service right now, what else could we do? We could medical support for people with no family support. So this is a group where we're saying it's the family support, which is the issue which is helping people actually reduce their alcohol. So we've got the group session idea. What else could we do if we can't ourselves do anything? We could, they could maybe. I mean, I think there's a difficulty there because one group have got something the other group don't have, you know. So yeah. And exactly, yeah. Come and join our family. Yeah. Yeah. Good luck.
I think what the reality is about having the strength in the measurement, the analysis of that one. You could potentially go from a procurement perspective at local authority level and then go to the CCGs.
You could. I'm thinking about right now, today, there's a group of people knocking at the door and we can't change the service. What would you do? You're running the service. Referral, okay? We could refer them somewhere else. Yeah. Hey. So, Peter down here, he runs a family support. You're now part of us now. So, yeah. You're running a family support project. So we can refer people who are you lot. We can say, come on, we'll give you some support, but you need to go to this project as well. That's changed things now, because we're no longer thinking about what is measurement of value in our organisation by itself. We have to start thinking about measurement of value in relationship with other organisations. And again, as soon as you start thinking about what should we measure, what's happening to people, it's very, very likely that you'll stop being an organisation with your contract and you'll start being an organisation with other organisations and other people who all start off with their own contracts. And we're now going to rush off to Anne, or no, you two are going to rush off to Anne, and you're going to go, tell you what, next year can we have one contract which we will bid for together in order to deliver this, what's happened now, a widening commission. But right now, we're going to refer. Yeah? Happy with that conversation? You're flexible about joint commissioning? Well, no, single commissioning of joint services.
Since that's what treatment things are really good enough.
Yeah.
Push it back to the commissioner at the beginning and just go, are we targeting the right people here? Because if a high proportion
At the beginning, only if you know. And what so often happens is that we're in a journey, and this is the point where we've discovered this reality is, you know, maybe we should have done things in the past, hindsight, great, but now we're here, so we're kind of doing something. What I want you to ask you, what happens if you, and you'll have to tell me, what do you have to do if you can't refer anybody anywhere, and you can't afford to do anything yourself? There's no referral in our community, there's no alternative. There's no other services. I mean, you know, it's not unlikely. You've got an issue here where all there is in their pool. You've got a bunch of people, you can't refer them somewhere else, and you can't afford to provide any changes to your service. What would you do?
Put them back into the service and try and do it again.
So that's one option. Put them back. They're going to be more depressing to work. They were depressed when they started. What else could you do? Do you think you might do if you're running this and you've got people coming? You can't do anything about it. So they will get more depressed if you provide the service.
commissioners, with the local authority
Okay.
and the CCG, and say, this is a serious risk, and we won't be
But
able to
what would
manage
you
it."
do?
Measure the
Nothing.
impact of it.
Don't give them the support.
Don't give
Yeah.
them the support. Surely. If you give them the support, they're going to be more depressed. You have evidence. This is always very difficult. It's one of those that jumps up with that. No, bar them. That's really terrible. You can't do that if people have come for help. Yes, but we have evidence if we only have them. They'll be worse. You shouldn't let them anywhere near you. Surely.
That's what I would say, because
D-
that's
it-
kind of true in theory,
But it isn't, is it?
yeah,
No.
because it targets.
Sorry, that was my earlier point. If you do this from the relationship of your contract relationship, there's lots of things you won't think about if you're going to be serious about managing and increasing the value of your work, because it's not part of how it works. But Chris will worry about that. Because it's embedded in the values of your organisation.
Because we have to look at people in the whites of their eyes.
I mean, I also sit on the board of a social enterprise, and in this situation where we have a group that it looks as though they won't get that positive outcome, we tell them, we say, in our experience, what's likely to happen is that you won't get the positive outcome. But we leave the decision up to them because we still remain really nervous about saying no. And I still worry about that because I think people will go, it won't be me. I know you've got evidence, but I won't be like that. And I think it's a difficult issue. There's no right answer to this, by the way, about whether you should refer, run your own service, or shut the door, or what. But there is an argument to be had. And again, what you'll see is the more you think about what we should be measuring as opposed to how we should measure one thing, the more you'll start as an organisation to have these kind of conversations with your commissioners, internally, with people on your board, particularly if they come from the very groups that you're working with. It'll change the culture. Don't worry about how should we measure something. Worry about whether you're having this kind of conversation. Okay, anyway, moving on, we're going to count them now. So we're going to measure this stuff. We've got some numbers of people, half and half roughly. How would you measure the healthier people? How will we know whether they've become healthier? Absolutely need a baseline at the beginning, otherwise we know nothing. It's astounding how many times there's no baseline, but anyway, leaving that. Yeah, moving on. How are we going to then measure? Healthier, what would you do? Blood pressure? Anything else? Ask the doctor.
There's lots of tools, isn't there?
Lots of tools. Yeah.
Web webs, funny webs, spider
Yeah.
webs,
Oh, yeah.
they're all
Lots of tools out there.
official.
What do you use, Chris?
Outcome stars, WEM webs, anything which we can use directly with the aim to issue it as it should.
So that's still keeping that direct relationship. And from your point of view, how do we measure things like these healthier people at work?
Well, this is, in a way, in two ways, at two levels. So, you know, there's things we're mandated to measure and huge, great big outcomes frameworks and things like that, but they're about population health. They're not about individuals' health. So certainly what we're starting to do is work with organisations like Chris's to try and understand people's health as well as
Those big
know,
things you have
those
to.
big
So you have to do
things
two
that
things as well.
yeah.
Mm.
But really we get our money on the basis of the top things, but we're interested in
Yeah.
the individual's health.
It's just like big fleas have little fleas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's and the depressed is the same thing. I mean, there's a bit of a physical health, mental health thing emerging here, but there are probably more tools out there for measuring than, the challenge is which, and you just kind of reeled off a bit of a list. It used to be, I don't know how to measure that, really. That's not the challenge anymore. The challenge is how do you make sure that the measurement tool you use is going to keep the deal you've got with whoever's paying you working, but most importantly, do something that's really going to help you understand the changes in people's lives, which will relate back to why they're there in the first place, if you're actually going to solve some of these issues to give you a sustainable change in people's lives as opposed to a short-term one. So how do you do that? Because, that in theory could be quite difficult. How did you, was outcome start just, that's easy, no problem? Or was,
It's a balance. It has to be a tool that's acceptable enough to whoever's got cash to pay.
yeah.
And ideally, it's a tool that is meaningful to the person who's working with.
Was that
they can
difficult to
actually
find?
use it.
'Cause I think a lot of people find that sort of, how do I measure this? What tool do I use? They find that a kind of can be a difficult process. Is that not?
No, not particularly. No, I mean, because there are now websites that list all of these
Yeah,
tools
yeah.
and tell you what the pros and cons are.
Yeah.
So you can narrow them down fairly quickly.
Anybody?
Pick it up from the analysis in the first instance, because the stage before that is understanding what's
Yes.
driving the problem.
Yes.
So once you understand that through analysis,
Yeah.
then you can identify.
Okay. So this is true if you start the analysis at the beginning well enough. But I think, again, if you're wanting to really increase the value you're creating, that needs to be a every year, regular process, so that you recognise that whatever the research was when you started, that it wasn't very good because you didn't have much time. It was based on somebody else's research anyway, and what's happening in your community with the people you're working with is now different, and so you need to keep updating that, even if you've done that. Okay, so we're going to measure a couple of things. We've got some people reducing weight. We've got some scale there, the Rosenberg scale. Wenweb was one you mentioned. You know, these are pretty well robust scales now around measuring some of these things that people used to say are soft, but actually they're not. They're things that are important to people's lives. You kind of dump the hard, soft stuff and think about, is this important or not? And we can measure that. That's okay. Off we go. What do you think, though, as somebody running this activity, you would be happy with, given that some people you won't be able to help, you can't help everybody. How many people would you be willing to accept have become more depressed if you're running it? What's the maximum before you go, oh shit, we must stop and change what we're doing? So just have a quick think about that number and don't shift it. Right? How many out of those 50 would you be willing to see becoming depressed? Chris? 10.
Yeah, I guess I'd be happy with that.
10. Anybody less than 10? How many would you be happy with? 5.
Being happy with it is irrelevant.
You're not happy with it, of course, but you're not going to change what you do. You're going to go, look, we're just going to keep going. Anybody higher than 40 become depressed, and 1 becomes healthy. It's controversial, yeah.
And then what was the level of use of sustaining from that reducing
Wow. Anybody like to come back? I've had high ones before. I've had 49 out of 50.
You know, but one of the realities will be is what's the sort of return on investment of what traditionally people spend on that course. So if they spend £500,000
Right.
on doing that, then that then becomes relative to the amount of people.
So one reference point would be, I think, a more of an economic return, as it says, if people are becoming mentally, losing mental health, what is that going to cost the rest of society compared to how much do we save when people become? That's one way of looking at that, which is driven by a kind of external cost saving approach, right? Do you look at that when you're thinking about?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but not possibly. I think we tend to look at more about value for money, because I must swear you and I probably, because return on investment isn't necessarily cashable.
No, I agree completely. Absolutely. That's what I worry about. If you go down that route, that you'll look at what is seen as somebody else's cashable sense of value. The fact is, you've all come up with a value. One out of 50. 45 out of 50. Yeah.
Just going back to that conversation about how many would you be concerned about, and I think you need to pick a really crap outcome, and if over a couple of sessions somebody's outcome progressively worse, you need to build that into kind of delivering, and you need to think about, is the supervisor needs to get involved, actually do you need to refer somebody on, right down then, you know, what's going on in their life, etc., etc. So in a way you should be using your outcome measures to give the staff.
Of course. So even if you start 10, you want to make it 9.
Absolutely.
But there will be a point where you can't do that, because the resources you're successfully doing is for in your case, 1. So you're going to be putting the money into the people who you're getting successes with. And every time you decide to reallocate resources from them to this other group now to make it 10 to 9, at some point you might risk losing some of the positives. So that's a tough decision. The reality is that everybody has their own view as to where that line is. Most organisations never have that conversation because they're not looking at this particularly. So this sense of which is more valuable doesn't occur. But what else could you do in order to find out how important? What's the relative importance of those two things? Who else could you ask? Yeah, ask people. Ask people. At a really simple level, it's just to get that group of people to say, how much more valuable is your mental health than your physical health? Or is it the other way around? Or are they equal? Or whatever. That, at a really low level, is quite a powerful way of getting some understanding of the answer to that question of where you should set your bars in an organisation. Because otherwise, what often happens is that Chris will set it. He'll say, I'm managing this, and it's 10. And nobody else really knows that, has it? And only when it gets to be 15 does somebody wake up and go, Chris, what's happening? You're saying 20 people, 49 people who are now depressed. Yeah. So there are lots of ways of doing that. I think what's important is that if you're thinking about maximising the value you're creating, you need to start worrying about the relative importance of these different things. Because if you make your service change, as you're suggesting you do, you need to know, well, if we move the resources there compared to there, what's the relative value of that? By reference to how important these things are. You can't make a change in your service design on this unless you know how important one is compared to the other. Otherwise, you don't know whether you might actually decrease the value you're creating compared to increasing it. You can't do it. As it happens, there are also ways increasingly of doing this using well-being valuations. And that's a super rigorous way, which you can go away and do, or you can just get people to kind of ask them. It's perfectly good. Now, the official thing for this is broadly about 4 to 1. That people value their mental well-being much higher than their physical well-being. Much higher. Not a bit higher. You know, our gut reactions. So that means that you need to have at least 4 people who are maintaining their health for every one person who is reducing their mental health. Otherwise, you're destroying value. The break-even point, if you want here, is that no more than 12.5 people should be down here. If you've got 12 people down here, you must be even. And if you haven't, you're destroying value. So 49 people down at the bottom, I'm afraid, is quite a big loss of value net to people's lives. It's fine. How do you feel about the putting on the spot on the one, but no, the rest of it's cool. Does that make sense, or is it?
Yeah, it makes sense now that it's being broken down.
Yeah.
I suppose I just also think like, the idea that even if some people are falling into 25 people deciding to mental well-being, then that number would have been higher had we not created the service. So I guess
So with the baseline thing we're here is to say these people are worse than they would have been. So the baseline was whatever they were, but because of being involved in the service and hoping that they would get something, which they didn't, they feel much more depressed because they feel now, I'm never going to fix this. So they come back relative to where they started. And there's a loss of value there. Yeah. And so
People there that would have stopped drinking or left to reduce their drinking anyway, without the service.
yes, very true. Causation. Next problem, yeah? So we're going to get on to that because that's the next bit of our challenge in this is, well, what would have happened anyway? Just this bit. Now we've got some sense in the organisation, from wherever virtually, there's some sense of the relative importance of these, and I do think you go out to people and get that. And you can start thinking, if we changed our service so that this went up by or that went down by, will that create more value or not? And you've got a sense of that. Again, most organisations are not thinking about this because we're tied into that contractual relationship. And if you're not asking for that to be happening,
I think it's blame the commissioner.
no, don't blame the commissioner. Why blame the commissioner?
We need intelligent commissioners who are going to work and understand some of this.
So I think that's best on that because there is this sense of, as people whose lives are changing, you don't have a lot of power in that conversation to make sure that for those of you who are now more depressed, your value is being represented in the decisions that Chris is making. So there's a problem there. The person who could do, to one extent, is the commissioner. But should we blame the commissioner for that, Chris?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
But I think it comes back to the point. Ideally, it becomes a dialogue. It's not a transaction.
No.
It's about creating what's the right relationship here, and ideally, it becomes a three-way relationship.
integrated also with the family sports service here.
Which obviously,
But I think the other bit is the values of the organisation. If the organisation's board is asking you to think about this, then I would point the finger as much at boards as an external body, because they've got to be that voice to answer these kind of questions. We'll come back, yes? Yeah.
Oh, slightly different. What about the greater difficulty of measuring because of the way we see it from an athlete? So it might be longer in time.
Yes.
People might move away
Yes.
geographically.
Yes. So this is the point where as you go down here, we're going back a bit, but it's fair enough, there's a chance that it's a longer time scale now you're worrying about, and you have to stay in touch with people to know whether these outcomes are actually happening. So you do have to stay in touch with people. So the implications of thinking about value from your point of view will quite often force organisations to have to think about collecting information which is later. And that means having some kind of data collection process of follow-up with people who have no longer involved in your organisation. And you won't be able to speak to all of them. And some of them move, and so it's difficult to stay in touch. How would you do that? How do you do that, Chris? You have that issue about following up after.
The following up, the main problem we have when we work is people changing their mobile phone numbers over and over and over. Another way round is to rely on research and agree with largely with the commissioner. What assumptions are we willing to agree on about what will happen based on evidence from elsewhere?
So I just wear my social enterprise director hat for that, and we use social media to stay in touch with people as well. Those are two fairly important things, but that changes a bit less than mobile number.
That's what we call that Interserve.
Yeah.
Nationally,
So there's a danger, personally, therefore I think there's a danger, because I think there are ways of staying in touch with a big enough proportion in order to have good enough information to inform your decisions. But that costs. So again, in this wearing this other hat, we pay for that, in the sense that if you provide information, you put it in a pot as a prize draw, and someone gets some money. Because we need that information to know whether we're creating as much value as we can or not. It's not necessarily free. So I think there is an implication, not only about later, but also potentially having to find the resources to collect that. But don't think it has to be from everybody. It just has to be from some. Yeah.
I was just going to say, and also actually maybe with that one, I mean, there could be longitudinal research in the area that maybe we as commissioners are
Yes.
supporting.
Yeah.
Or it could be that we're working across an area, like we do in Greater Manchester, and trying to look at it at a GM level and get some sort of idea of the sort of difference in the longer term, and then sort of coming to, because it's sort of accepting that they may not be able to track all of them. So actually, can we work together?
Yep.
It's a way of doing
Yep.
that.
Agreed.
By working with universities, working with students who are doing
Yep.
long-term.
So there are lots of ways of tracking this. We've done that. Get yourself a free university or a PhD student. Fantastic. Okay, so let's do the causation bit, because I've now got 8 minutes. So then you raised that question about, was it us? We ran this service. These people report this information that lives have been changed according to what we thought they said they wanted. Fantastic. But was it really our service that led to that change? How would you know? Control group, meaning?
Meaning other people who have similar characteristics and then compared with.
Okay. Control, ask them. Anybody else? Any other approaches? There's one other kind of, you kind of mentioned it already, I think. There may be regional data around changes that are happening to the kind of wider population which is roughly like yours that you can get for free, to give you that sense. Down the control group route, quite expensive, because that means you lot are on our programme, we're going to come over here and find another group of people who are quite like you, but they're not. We're going to say to you, can you provide us with information? You're not in this service, but can you provide us with information? And you're likely to go, no, yes, unless we pay you for it. So there are implications about resources. There's national research around some of these things, which might be available. But I still think there's a bit of me that goes, asking people is pretty useful. It may not be brilliantly academically rigorous evidence of causality, but it can be really useful as a way of understanding how people have got different experiences. And we find a group of people who go, nothing much would have happened, it would have been a disaster, may share a characteristic, but the group of people who go, it would have been difficult, but in 6 months' time, and if you can identify that different characteristic, you can deliver better services to one group than another.
Career offenders is a really good example of that because it could be this that changes it, but it could be the fact that they get clean and they meet somebody and it's the relationship that changes.
Exactly. So that's the bit. You can pick those things up.
Yeah.
And asking people is a way into that.
Yeah.
It's useful from a, if your organisation is thinking about how can we increase value, it's really useful, for instance. If you're thinking it's going to be a rigorous proof that you can wander off to policy level with, it probably won't be. You will need that answer to another research. So my commission, yeah.
The challenge is, I think, once you come to this whole kind of
Thinking
to
process.
and fro in kind of
Yeah.
the process,
Yeah.
right at the beginning, I'm a director of CCC and I used to take CCC to big multinational organisations and I'm part of the reasonable point is this or the accident actually happened. They're not experts in it, they're far from experts in nobody's publishing this society. It shows you how wrong the line is. So what you've got
You ready, Anne?
you've got this huge range because you're overcoming the population. What you've got, Anne, is a way of weaving language and mechanisms that are used to get these
Yeah.
population first. When you get that kind of service, that first, that absolute first one, and by bringing people,
Yeah.
bringing all your local people together, doing what you can do, by the time you get the rest of it, that dialogue and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The challenge at the forefront is, before you have that conversation, initially this is what certainly me being the last specification, people who think it's an expert, it's absolutely not. So the challenge right back at the first point is, before we start to talk, are the right people
Yeah.
in the room. I think that's what you're getting to
Yeah.
this point. Are
Yeah.
the right people there
Exactly.
who are actually seeing it?
Exactly.
9 times out of 10.
They may not be. We all start from somewhere, and again, asking people what else is affecting their lives or going to the thing that they're saying important will tend you to realise what other bits should be, other groups or people should be in the room. So, and to this kind of what do you do about the what would have happened anyway question and the relationship that has to who else we should be working with.
Well, certainly, I think, and I hope Chris would agree and so, but there is quite a level of dialogue and before you start, so it's almost like our dialogue starts before you get to that stage
Yeah.
and we, very much trying to think back and then keep the dialogue ongoing.
Yeah. So there's not a right answer to that. I mean, at one level, you can do your own little service and you know it's not going to have the wider effects you need, but at least you can control it. At the other level, you can go, we need to commission for the UK's population in one mega contract.
Yeah.
And of course, that's not going to happen either. So there isn't a right answer to where you're doing that. And we're all tired with where we are in that anyway. So it's all horribly imperfect. But the thinking process that should encourage the next one to be going further back or getting the right people in the room, and this dialogue is what's more important therefore than the measurement bit to some extent anyway.
It's like David saying, no, it's like you have to put it in boxes somewhere.
Somewhere it has to go in the box, absolutely. Can't avoid it. Whether you move it up or down, it might be a better box or a worse box.
Yeah.
In the box. Let's just look at the extreme situation here where you lot, who've got the family support, all of you, our control group information says, would have become healthier anyway, even if you weren't here. Whereas you lot, the ones who don't have family support, you're all more depressed because you got involved with our service. What would you do now, Chris?
Give up.
Yeah.
I think the response is there about do we review what has or hasn't worked, and an option, which I have done twice in 10 years, is to go back to commission and say stop commissioning.
Yeah. So these thinking processes that we're kind of working our way through have the opportunity, which is a difficult one for an organisation to confront, but it's really important to communicate value, saying, actually, stop, do something else. Because this service, because it's wrong place completely, is destroying value. Although, you could, theoretically, still measure this and it could look good. And the measurement you'd use would be acceptable to some commissioners, potentially. But you're now in a situation where you are wasting resources and making people's lives worse.
And if you, what my experience, if you do that, it increases trust with commissioners and actually leads to more work. Our income has gone up because we've
He's still here.
contracts.
Yeah, but it's a challenge. That day we go, can I just, you don't feel that there's an encouragement to go along to anyone and say, do you know what, half of what we've done would have happened anyway? You're encouraged to inflate the stories.
What we find is helpful for a very
summary, we need to think about principles and activities, of course. We need to recognise that there are different people experiencing things in different ways. You need to get this mixture of the third-party research and the voice of people whose lives are actually being changed in some kind of balance, not easy to fix. We need to recognise it's not an easy decision how far you go. You've got to think about some kind of sustainability in that. It's probably going to therefore involve other organisations. And please make sure you're thinking about everybody and not just the success stories when you think about managing value. Do all that, and your commissioner will love you forevermore. And so we have a set of principles as an organisation which just basically help you go through that process that we've just been through at super speed, and we run out of time really, and there's still plenty more we could talk about. But just as a sense of, if the organisation moves from one that does whatever it does to one that says, in the board, are we creating as much value as we can with the money we have? Not give us more money, we'll do more good things, but are we really sure that we couldn't have created more money with the value we have? My experience is that very few organisations really in that place, where they really are challenging themselves in terms of could we have done better, where they're looking at alternative service designs seriously as to which one would have had more value created. If you do that, and you have someone on the board, as someone on the board is asking those questions, everything else will tend to follow. And we worry too much about technique in this and not enough about getting that cultural question right. And that's the big thing. Those principles are designed to help people who want to say, let's maximise value instead of let's tell you how much value we created and might be brilliant anyway. And that, you're running out of time, I'm afraid, but quickly, is
So
the kind of rolling that kind of thinking through in Salford at the moment from a commission perspective.
So this has been put together by the Health and Wellbeing Board. So it's actually an example of something that you get when you work together. And we're just trying to put together something that puts the people up front and then links it right the way through the services to the things we have to measure through the outcomes. And we have sort of start well, live well, age well, that sort of age course. And this is linked in with some of the devolution work that we're now doing in Greater Manchester. So it's sort of a common approach, and it's shared between commissioners and providers, and it's shared between areas. So this is the Salford bit of it, but actually we're doing the same at everyone level as well.
You've got a new big one of these coming out, which is more or soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So quickly, we have a self-assessment tool that's free, which takes you through some of these questions. We have a database which is bizarrely anyone can add anything to, not just one closed. You can add any outcome, any indicator, and any value to it. Please do, but also it's a resource for people who are struggling with those bits. And the website which is trying to collect stories. It's hard to get people to share stories. One of the biggest challenges for people in this is we don't share enough examples. Everybody's creating value to some extent or not. How we thought about it, and we're not sharing it, we don't learn from it. And of course, for membership organisations to join immediately, can't leave room others. Because in the end, this has to be a community of practice of people having these dialogues, these arguments, and working out what is actually effective and what's working. If we don't measure it, okay, we've gone, I'm afraid. I'm sorry, we've run out of time. We could have, an hour's not long enough, obviously, but we've had a go. Thank you very much. We're here for more questions.